You mentioned the agnostic man. You also mentioned an Indian man who saw the city of God. So that comes back to, do we have to be Christian to experience God in heaven?
Yeah, you're asking the Christian pastor. You're leading me into the trap.
Oh, I don't mean to lead you into a trap.
No, I'm totally I'm teasing. I'm teasing. But there is something. I think so. I think some of us have been burned by Christians who have not understood the magnitude of the grace of God, and as a result have led people to believe that God doesn't care about anybody but us. That's not true, and I'm showing that in the very first three chapters. It's called God of all nations.
Hmm. Okay.
But the other side of it is what these people experience. So, for instance, Santosh Akarchi was this Indian manufacturing engineer. So again, very smart people. He traveled the world doing engineering, but he was raised in Hinduism. His dad was a Sanskrit scholar. That was all he knew. The Hindu gods was all he knew.
Hmm.
He dies. He hears code blue. His pancreas ruptured, and he hears code blue. They couldn't revive his heart, and they put him on artificial life support for 3 days. 3 days later, when he comes back, he tells what happened. He left his body. He sees his body there. This brilliant light comes, and he knows it's a divine light. He says, and I knew this light had ultimate authority, and I had to do whatever it wanted.
Hmm.
He said, but I fell in love with this light. That was his first response. And then they travel. And he said it was like through tunnels, right? And that's another one of the commonalities. But they come to this place where the light stops, parked over what he describes as this giant compound. Now, I've been to India many times, and at first I was like, "What do you mean compound?" And it took me a while to figure out what he was saying. But in India, there are compounds, literally like high walled areas, gated. And he said it was like that, but these beautiful walls, high walls inside this beautiful like landscape, but mansions and buildings of otherworldly material, and it was square in shape, thousands of miles long. And he said, when you're there, your eyesight is like telescopic.
Hmm.
Well, that's another commonality as well.
Hmm.
But he said, and there were 12 gates. I counted them.
Wow.
And outside the gates were angels. And that's when I realized I'm looking at the kingdom of heaven. And he said, all I wanted was to enter there. He said, I realized that's the goal of existence, to be there.
Hmm.
So he experiences, and if you've ever read Revelation 21
Yeah.
and you look at his words, it's like that's what he's
Yeah.
experiencing,
Yeah.
you know? And then he he's like, where am I? And again, this is an experience more real than he said, more real than anything we've experienced here. And he says, where am I? And he looks, and he's up on a high platform, and he looks down to his left, and he describes an abyss. He describes hell.
Hmm.
And he's like, I want to go there. I don't want to go there. He turns and he sees who he describes as God now in the appearance of a giant man on a throne.
Hmm.
That's what he describes.
Interesting. Okay.
I know. I'm not making this up.
Yeah.
This is just what he told me. And and he looks into his eyes and he gets a life review, like he sees all of it, the good and the bad, and he falls to his knees and he says, God, forgive me, because he realizes all the wrongs he had done. And then the Lord speaks to him and he says, I was shocked because there was such tenderness, such compassion, such mercy in his voice. And he said, I'm going to send you back. And when you go back, I want you to love your family, especially your daughter. She needs your help right now.
Hmm.
So see, this stretches everybody's categories, right? is that he's the God who is with us, all of us. And he knows everything intimately about everyone we interact with, and he cares about all of us. That's the thing. If you miss that, you miss the big picture.
Right.
But we can also reject him. And that's what Santosh was also seeing. And so then he sees right next to this throne what he calls a very narrow door that was open to me. And he could go into the kingdom of heaven. And he asked the Lord, he said, when I come back, and he said, because there was such mercy and compassion and love in his voice, I started to relax. And I said, when I come back, how do I go through that narrow door? And the Lord said, and he was thinking about religion, like, what religion do I choose? What do I go to? You know, and he was thinking, which temple or synagogue or church or do I go to? And the Lord said, what I want is relationship, not one day a week, 365 days a year. How honest will you be with me? How real, how sincere, how honest will you be with me? And then he said, the wages of sin is death. Walk with me and surrender yourself daily to me. And then he sends him back. 2 years later, his daughter is invited to sing in a choir at a church because she was a choral major. Santosh goes to hear her sing, and the pastor is speaking on the passage in John 10 where Jesus says, you know, or in Matthew 7 where he says, you know, I am the gate. I am the gate into the kingdom of heaven. And then John 10 where he says, you know, I'm the gate and the sheep will come in and out. And Santosh goes and he starts reading the Bible.